Alright, time to go down another YouTube rabbit hole. Last time, we took a look at the very, very creepy YouTube animator known as 3Lame Studio, who made some extremely questionable content to say the least. Why don't we start this video off with an update on 3Lame? Well, for starters, if you're wondering why you haven't been seeing any actual 3Lame animation footage here, it's because guess who copyright claimed my video? Yeah, sadly after like a month or so of the 3Lame video being up, it got hit with 2 separate copyright claims from 3Lame himself. I tried to fight them, but even though the video was entirely fair use, I came up empty-handed. 3Lame has been known to do this before, so I'm not that surprised I was a target. But it just really sucks all the money that video makes from now on is going to his pockets. So far, almost every one of these YouTube deep dive videos has been hit with a copyright claim of some kind. Thankfully, the one on the content farm video was quickly resolved, but the point still stands. It's a dangerous game talking about other people on the internet. Hurt their feelings too much, and they'll just abuse the copyright system and steal your money. Man, I love YouTube. It's thanks to channel sponsors that I don't have to worry as much about this kind of nonsense happening to me. So before we get into the main meat of today's video, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. You thought I forgot to do the thing, didn't you? I could never. But first, insert another Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria Simulator lawsuit segment joke here, because today's video is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Injured and want to pursue legal options? That's where Morgan & Morgan comes in. Many people think hiring a law firm is a long and complicated process. However, with Morgan & Morgan, you can submit a claim from the comfort of your own home. That's right, you don't need to visit law offices and sit through timely consultations. In 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim to Morgan & Morgan and have a lawyer review your case as soon as possible. Morgan & Morgan is your 21st century law firm, modernizing the entire process to fit your busy lifestyle. Calling is too inconvenient? You can text your attorney at any time throughout the legal journey. That's just one of the many perks Morgan & Morgan offers you. They truly put you first. In a case of injury, making sure to get fantastic legal representation should be a high priority. You can click the link in the description below and check out Morgan & Morgan today. Thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. I haven't really talked about content directly made for kids before in this channel. Sure, some of the 3Lame stuff was definitely quote-unquote made for kids to some degree, but it's all still a bit risque, you know what I mean? When I mean kids content, I mean kids content. Like Sesame Street on a shoestring budget and made in some guy's basement, which pretty accurately describes today's subject, Puppet Steve. Except replace learning about the alphabet and meeting the Wicked Witch of the West with opening bootleg FNAF figures that are definitely not safe to be in close proximity with. On a surface level, Puppet Steve seems like a fairly boring video topic for me to cover. Like, we're going from a guy who made some of the creepiest animations on YouTube to a middle-aged man LARPing as Steve from Minecraft opening FNAF toys for children. Okay, when you say it out loud, even without all the extra shit we're gonna talk about, that does sound like something I would cover. But besides that, if Puppet Steve was truly just a simple kids YouTube channel and nothing more, even if the overall concept of the thing is a bit odd, I wouldn't have covered it. However, if you've watched me in these YouTube deep dive videos long enough at this point, you'd know that nothing is ever as simple as it seems on the surface. So gather around everyone, as I take you through the complete journey of Chris Boers, the man behind Puppet Steve. And just for a taste of what's to come, this story has to do with old YouTube drama, the angry video game nerd, AVGN clones, 80s memorabilia, Skylanders, ghost hunting, another entirely different YouTube puppet show for kids, FNAF, and a whole lot more. That sound like a wild ride? Well, it is. Strap in, everyone. The beginning of this story takes us back to the very early days of YouTube. The site itself was created in 2005, and Chris Boers made his first YouTube channel in 2006. Yeah, we're going way back for this one. Chris's first channel isn't really anything of note for this story. It mostly just featured some random stuff alongside some ghost hunting content, which was and still is a really big passion of his. In 2006, 2 YouTube videos were uploaded to the site that would drastically change the course of history as we know it. These were re-uploads of a couple episodes of The Angry Video Game Nerd. The content being posted to YouTube around this time was usually very amateur stuff with no real thought being put into it. Well, either that or just re-uploads of other popular media. James Rolfe, the man behind The Angry Nerd, was already producing these episodes for his own website before he ever thought about uploading them to YouTube. But when he finally did upload some of his previous work to the site, it changed the game forever. Videos of this production value and quality for the time were very few and far between, especially for something as nerdy and niche as video games. James really broke new ground for the YouTube community, and once he started to take off, an endless army of AVGN clones began to follow. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to be the next angry reviewer. There were so many clones that it pretty much became its own genre. None of these clones ever reached the level of success that James did. It would be almost impossible to do that. However, one man came somewhat close enough to build an entire YouTube career off of it. That man was Chris Bors, better known as the Irate Gamer. Okay, let's pause here, because that is a lot to take in. Yes, if you were not aware, Puppet Steve, yes, that Puppet Steve, was created by the Irate Gamer. For those of you who know who that is, take some time to let that process in your brain. And for everyone else, let's keep going and I'll explain this whole situation. In April of 2007, Chris created his second YouTube channel under the name The Irate Gamer. His videos were heavily inspired by the angry video game nerds content, to say the least. Even to the point where Chris has been accused of plagiarizing jokes and lines from AVGN episodes. The evidence is pretty damning, I gotta admit. Whether it be intentional or not, The Irate Gamer took a lot of notes from the angry video game nerd. The names of the characters are also pretty much the exact same. Irate just means to feel anger, so his name is literally just The Angry Gamer, which is pretty much the angry video game nerd with a few steps removed. So yeah, needless to say, people in the YouTube gaming community didn't really like Chris all that much. The Irate Gamer wasn't all that popular, or should I say infamous, at the start though. Chris kinda just blended in with all the other angry reviewers at the time. Sure, his editing skills were definitely above average compared to the competition, but at the end of the day, he was just one of many. That was, until he had a video featured by YouTube. Nowadays, we have the trending tab in all its subcategories, but back in the early days of YouTube, there were videos picked out to be featured and shown to every single user on the homepage of the site. An angry reviewer had never been featured on the homepage of YouTube before, but on that fateful day, the Irate Gamer's review of Super Mario Bros. 2 was featured on the front page. Chris having videos so similar in style to AVGN, and being given the privilege of YouTube front page status, made him an easy target for haters to completely shit on him. And even to this day, there are people who despise the Irate Gamer. I rewatched the Mario 2 review for this video, and I can see why people much older than me at the time really didn't like this thing. It kinda just shits on Mario 2 for being different from the other Mario games on the NES, and doesn't give many actual reasons as to why it's bad. The actual Mario 2, aka The Lost Levels, is a pretty bad game that has held up way worse than Mario 2 USA, and features some genuinely archaic level design. The two things I will give this video is 1, the editing is fairly decent for the time, and 2, it was undoubtedly the video that made an entire new generation aware of the fact that Mario 2 USA was actually another Japanese exclusive game called Doki Doki Panic, but just given a Mario-themed reskin. I remember being blown away by this as a child, and I definitely found out about it because of this review. Part of the reason I wanted to make this video at all is that I actually grew up watching the Irate Gamer. I never really got into the AVGN, even though his videos are undoubtedly better. But because of this Mario 2 review, I was able to find a rabbit hole of all of Chris's other content. By the time I had found the Mario 2 review, around 2012, the main controversy between him and the AVGN had pretty much been dead for a while, and there was years worth of Irate Gamer content to watch. The main thing I ended up being interested in, however, was his content on 80s toys and memorabilia. I was born in 2003, and had literally never had any interest in toys from the 80s before, but for some reason, Chris's series called Irate the 80s was just super interesting to me. It was like looking into a completely different world with completely different toys from what I was used to. I would binge this series over and over again as a kid, and it was fun learning about the fucking weird, gross 80s themed cereals, the good 80s cereals, aka the monster cereals, weird Kool-Aid lore, Mad Balls, Micro Machines, the list goes on. These videos, even just looking back on them today with nostalgia aside, are leagues better than his AVGN clone videos. Chris would always edit these videos with fun cameos from the characters related to the 80s topic he was covering, and you could tell he was genuinely having fun with this kind of content. It's clear that Chris had a very strong passion for toys and collectibles, even doing an episode of the Irate Gamer on the NES accessory Rob the Robot. If only there was some way for Chris to combine his love of video games and toys into one series for his YouTube channel. In 2011, after many reboots of Spyro the Dragon with differing levels of success, Activision decided to let the game studio, Toys for Bob, have a crack at rebooting Spyro for a new generation. They passed around some ideas, but eventually settled on a concept that used brand new NFC technology to take figures from the real world that kids could buy at a toy store and bring them to life in the game world. This kind of toys to life idea had been done before with something called UHYEAH Funkies, which I've never really looked into, but I do remember seeing the figures for them all the time at Toys R Us as a kid. While UHYEAH Funkies was pretty short-lived and only lives as a relic of the time now, Toys for Bob had something big on their hands. They pitched the idea to Nintendo as an exclusive for the Wii, but ended up getting rejected. They banked so hard on Nintendo agreeing to a deal that they had to rush ports to the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC within only a few months. However, all the hard work paid off when Skylanders Spyro's Adventure was released in 2011 to worldwide success. This then led to 5 more games, a Netflix show, multiple companies trying to copy the concept, and the eventual death of Toys to Life when the market got way too crowded. Now, much like the UB Funkies of old, Skylanders are nothing but a memory of those who grew up with it as a kid. Why am I telling you all this? Well, as you could probably guess, Chris Bors ended up taking a pretty big interest in the Skylanders franchise. After the massive success of the first game and during the lead up to the sequel, Skylanders Giants, Chris decided to start making Skylanders news content. These videos were mostly just him reporting on what new figures to expect in the upcoming games in the series. And this Skylanders content is pretty important to the overall story here. You see, before this point, Chris had stuck to his gimmick pretty hard. His content was either angry reviews or the 80s memorabilia reviews. Nothing he covered was ever super recent. That all changed with Skylanders, however. It was a new video game series that heavily focused on toys marketed towards children. In the description of his first Skylanders video, he stated, "I know this video won't appeal to many, but this is something I enjoy covering." Which is pretty ironic, considering that this video in question now sits at over 1 million views. He was probably right about his core audience not giving a shit about Skylanders content.
Hey guys, IRAGamer here, and today we're going to talk about the Skylanders. I love me some Skylanders. What do you think, empty bag of pork rinds guy? Well, personally, I think Skylanders is stupid. But I would really like to have some more pork rinds if I could.
But his end goal here was pretty clearly to find a new audience of younger gamers and toy fans, which he was pretty successful in doing. You know when I mentioned earlier that the Mario 2 review was what led me down the IRAGamer rabbit hole? Well, that's technically a lie. What I found first was obviously the Skylanders stuff. I was so into it as a kid, and I would consume as much content related to the games as possible back then. The Skylanders videos then led me to the Mario 2 review, which then led me to the rest of Chris's back catalog. The Skylanders coverage was a massive success for Chris, and his first big W in a while. It showed him the power of marketing towards a younger generation by covering popular toys, which would obviously become relevant much later in his YouTube career. Chris would continue to do the same kind of content for a while, cycling in Skylanders videos whenever it became relevant again thanks to a new game. However, after the hype season for the 5th game in the series, it was pretty obvious that Skylanders as a franchise was on its way out. So Chris opted out of covering the 6th and final entry in the series, Imaginators. Or at least that's what you'd think if you were only paying attention to the IRAGamer channel. But before we get back to Skylanders, we have to take a detour to a completely different channel called Alphabet Bunch ABC Letter People Phonics. In 2015, with the IRAGamer channel being fairly dead all things considered, Chris decided to start looking for new ways to make money being a content creator on YouTube. The first of these new ideas was a puppet-themed YouTube channel aimed directly at kids. Unlike his Skylanders content on IRAGamer, where it was fairly kid-friendly but still felt like Chris was kinda just being himself, the Alphabet Bunch is a straight-up children's program, focusing on, well, the alphabet. The videos are ultimately harmless, and are honestly better than like 99% of the actual garbage kids content on this site. Like compared to fucking 3Lame, this is actually Sesame Street quality. I know that's a very low bar, but it's kinda just what we're dealing with on YouTube. Anyway, after a few videos on this channel, Chris wasn't seeing the results he was hoping for, and decided to focus his attention on a new project. This would be another kids-oriented channel that was home to a show called the Marty and Muffin Puppet Show, which repurposed puppets from the Alphabet Bunch for a new toy review style format. The first of these videos was on a Minions Mega Block set, and honestly the production value and effort here is actually fairly high. Chris does this whole stop motion building montage of the set in the video, and it looks really cool, I won't even lie. Once again, this is fairly harmless kids content, if not a little more brain rotty compared to the Alphabet Bunch. Anyway, now you're about to witness Marty and Muffin be murdered in real time. And I mean that! After the Mega Bloks video, Chris would put out a Gravity Falls toy review. Once again, pretty standard stuff. But then the third video on the channel would change everything. The third episode of the Marty and Muffin Show is about unboxing a figure of the Ender Dragon from Minecraft. And can you take a wild guess who shows up as a cameo? There he is! There's that fucker! Yes, everybody, the Marty and Muffin Show channel was the origin of Puppet Steve. But not only was it the origin of Puppet Steve, it would also soon be the home for the parasite itself. After one more video marketed as being under the Marty and Muffin brand, Puppet Steve would take over the entire channel as it rose to success. The funniest part of all this is that the intro to the videos is literally the same between the two shows, just with the Puppet Steve assets swapped in. Puppet Steve actually killed Marty and stole his channel! Truly one of the saddest YouTube deaths ever. A moment of silence for our boy Marty, please. Anyway, the rest is pretty much history. Chris would continue to make toy reviews using these Minecraft puppet characters, and ended up focusing on mascot horror merch and other random popular children's toys. And hey, remember those Skylanders videos that kind of started all of this? Take a wild guess where they ended up for Imaginators. It's really funny too, because these videos are edited in the exact same way that they were when they were on the UHYEAH Gamer channel. From that point forward, Puppet Steve became Chris's main focus, and he pretty much moved away from the UHYEAH Gamer channel. He still uploads to it now and then, even making some new episodes or compilations for fun, but the days of UHYEAH Gamer being a popular and controversial figure are long gone. He even did a collab episode with the AVGN after all these years, so clearly all that drama has been buried and the two have just made up. Now, I could end things off right there, but it would be a shame if I didn't talk about some of the Puppet Steve exclusive lore for a little bit, right? The channel has been around for so long, there's bound to be a few interesting things to talk about. For starters, the overall quality of these videos has been on a heavy decline over the years. In some of the earlier videos, especially the super early stuff, the segments with the actual puppets doing skits and stuff are way more common and with some actual effort put into them. However, if we take a look at the recent content on the channel, it's rare to find a video with any of the other puppet characters or any actual skits. I don't really blame Chris though. I don't think I could keep upping the effort of this kind of content if I was doing it for as many years as he has. The other thing is that the views on this channel are way down from where they were a few years ago, and that's probably prompted him to stop devoting as much time to a single video. As to why the views are down, I think it's just a case of his core audience growing up. While Puppet Steve is a much more successful channel than the UHYEAH Gamer ever was, Puppet Steve as a concept doesn't really offer any opportunities to grow up with the audience it was building. If kids who were watching Puppet Steve like 4 years ago want to watch FNAF merch content now, there are plenty of alternatives targeted towards an older demographic. Also, just in general, I think discussion of FNAF and other mascot horror merch is way less of a genre on YouTube than it was a few years ago, when titans such as Andy Matronic were still active in the community. I don't know if that's FNAF merch just not being as interesting or fresh as it was 3 years ago, especially on the Funko side, or just the shifting tides of the YouTube algorithm. But whatever happened, it definitely hit Puppet Steve pretty hard. Enough of this sad analytical stuff though. Let's just talk about how ironically funny these Puppet Steve videos can be. I know picking on content made for literal 5-year-olds is low-hanging fruit, but come on, there's some genuinely funny shit to talk about here. For starters, it's very obvious that Chris knows pretty much nothing about FNAF outside of whatever he's figured out through merch and some other very basic information. There's many examples of this, but one of my favorite ones comes from his Puppet Steve video on Five Nights at Candy's Mexican bootleg toys. These Mexican bootlegs of FNAF figures are extremely infamous in the FNAF merch community, and Puppet Steve has reviewed them many times before. The figure set featured in this video includes Blank and some deranged looking dog animatronic that is definitely not from Five Nights at Candy's. The funny part comes from the fact that Chris absolutely has no idea that this animatronic isn't actually from Candy's while he's reviewing it. He only found out after he'd already reviewed the thing, and actually added in a segment of him figuring out in real time that the dog isn't from FNAF.
Now the really weird thing about this character is I tried to find his name online, and well, I didn't see one. In fact, I'm not even sure if he's in the actual game or not, because I couldn't even find any video game footage of this guy either. Huh, weird.
Just the idea of reviewing a toy you think is from something specific, and then finding out immediately afterwards that you were wrong, is really funny to me, I don't know why. Not even a big deal or anything, but this moment sticks in my mind anytime I think of Puppet Steve. Chris's whole setup for the Puppet Steve channel is really funny on its own. The videos are recorded on some really shitty table that is extremely wobbly and just hasn't been replaced or fixed the entire time. Everything is either constantly about to fall over or straight up falling over, and it's really funny just seeing the table earthquake around the figures constantly. I honestly hope he never fixes the table though, because it really adds to the comedy of these videos. I think I'll end off this video here talking about a specific ongoing arc on the Puppet Steve channel, that being the Withered Animatronic Funko arc. For those of you who don't know, the Withered Animatronics from FNAF 2 never got plushies or action figures from Funko, even though they are some of the most highly requested characters. Funko has been pretty much radio silent on the topic, as one may expect, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel, Because Puppet Steve has a Funko contact. Being a toy reviewer and pretty much reviewing every single new FNAF Funko product that comes out, it's no surprise that Chris would have access to someone on the inside. On March 18th, 2022, a video would be uploaded to the Puppet Steve channel called FNAF Funko, Where Are Those Wizards? Articulated and Plush, which is an 11-minute video going over an email he sent to his Funko contact with the most highly requested FNAF products from his comment section. The list itself is just more proof Chris has pretty much no idea what he's talking about a lot of the time when it comes to FNAF stuff. It features characters under games they don't belong to, such as Nightmare Balloon Boy being listed under FNAF 3, Yendo being listed under Pizza Sim, and even Phantom Bonnie being listed under FNAF 3, when that character just isn't a thing that exists. I don't point this out to shit on Chris. At the end of the day, he was just trying to do a nice thing for the community. But it's still pretty funny, you gotta admit. Anyway, the main request on this list was, of course, the withered animatronics, both in plush and figure form. That was the last we heard about the situation until 4 months ago, when Puppet Steve uploaded a follow-up video insisting that the wizards are coming this year according to his contact. This is an ongoing story, so I guess I'll just have to wait and see if Puppet Steve can pull through for the withered animatronic bros out there. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much the lore of Puppet Steve and Chris Sports. From angry reviews, to Skylanders, to killing Marty in cold blood, to reviewing FNAF figures for a living, the whole story is definitely a crazy one. There's also the ghost hunting stuff, which to my knowledge Chris still does. He's been on the news for it and even wrote a book about it, which is pretty wild. This is a video I wanted to put together for a while, since most videos on Chris are from like 6 or more years ago and only focus on the AVGN drama, when he's had such a more interesting history than just that. Guess it took someone who actually grew up watching him with no clue about the drama for it to happen. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. And just in case Chris is watching, genuinely thank you for being an important part of my childhood, as funny as that may sound. If you have any other interesting semi-FNAF related YouTube rabbit holes you think I should cover, leave them below or shout at me on Twitter. Anyway, I'm done here. I've been UHYEAH, and I'll see you all next time.
Get the fuck off my property!